Once upon a time.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So as you can see, I'm joined by my husband Taylor and this guy. This is Axel. This is our baby. He is 2.5 weeks old now. He was born on November 7th at 2:43 a.m. and we are here to tell the story.
We did have a vlog which you can see, we'll link it below.
Yeah.
Which kind of just visually chronicles it. We talk a few times about what's going on while we're there.
So we didn't do a video like this for Levi, our oldest son, when he was born, because that was before I started my channel. But the labor for the two of them was kind of similar in a lot of ways, so I might kind of tie details in from his in with this story, if that makes sense. So it all started on Thursday night. So that was actually the 5th. So the night following the 5th. And we were in bed. We were like already asleep almost. I was almost asleep. He was asleep. Levi was coughing. And so I went in there to see if he was okay. And then I went back to bed and I felt like some stuff coming out. And I was like, it wasn't a lot. It was just like a little, but more than what I would consider is like normal for a day-to-day middle of the night situation. And I had like this tight, like cramping feeling that didn't really feel like contractions. It just felt like cramping and pressure. And it was so much so that I couldn't comfortably lay down in bed or sit or anything. There's like fuzz flying around. So I remember just kind of like sitting there in a half sitting position on the bed, kind of like, okay, what do I do? And so I finally was comfortable enough to like lay down. So I woke Taylor up and I was like, so we need to call the doctor. And he was like, no, like he thought we were gonna have like the whole weekend and maybe another week before the baby came because Levi was 2 weeks late. So we called the on-call doctor or the nurse or whoever answers in the middle of the night. And they said, okay, that definitely sounds like, you know, your water could have broken. And so they said, just, you know, casually wait a couple hours and come in the next 2 hours. 1 or 2 hours is what they said.
Yeah.
So we kind of just casually got packed, you know, packed Levi's bag. My bag was already packed Taylor's bag, and then contacted our family and stuff. So my mom and sister, the plan was for them to like be in there with us during the labor and the birth and stuff, and then his parents were going to take Levi. So we went to the hospital about 2 o'clock and they checked me and I was at 1 centimeter and 50% effaced, which was really exciting for me because like I said with Levi's, I could not get my labor to start naturally, and this time it had started naturally. So I was really excited about that. I was just super proud of that.
It was totally the opposite last time. And for me, I got my hopes up pretty high also because of that, because I was like, hey, that's kind of one big step forward that didn't happen last time. So
the last thing that they did while we were in triage was they wanted to test the fluid basically and make sure that it was my water that had broken and it wasn't like some whatever other fluid, I don't know. So they did that test and concluded that yes, that's what it was. And so they admitted me back into the labor ward. So when we got back there, I talked to the nurses and I said, you know, here's what I'm hoping for. I really want a natural labor and delivery. I didn't, you know, I knew in the back of my mind that there was a possibility that that wasn't going to be feasible because of what I'd gone through with Levi. But I said, you know, if at all possible, I'd like to do a natural labor and delivery as much as I can. And so basically we just set about walking laps around the hospital trying to get my contractions to pick up and to be more like productive. That went on for a few hours and it wasn't really happening. It wasn't really picking up. And so I had Pitocin and I had an IV of fluids. So I had Pitocin for maybe like an hour or two and things were picking up. So they turned it off and I didn't necessarily need it anymore. While I was on Pitocin and walking around and doing my laps, that's when my contractions started to really get difficult. And I remembered from like my birthing class or whatever that we had done with Levi, the breathing patterns that I used last time, and so I was using those, and that was literally the only thing that got me through my contractions alive because they were so awful. And so eventually it was just so painful that I decided I wanted to go into the tub where they have the jetted hot water, and it's just like amazing. So I was in there for a little while and I was listening to the Beatles, I remember. And so I hung out in the tub for a while, and the contractions were extremely, extremely painful. And I found out later that it's because I was having back labor again, which is what I had with Levi too. So basically I don't know what regular contractions feel like. I only know back labor contractions, and if anyone has had back labor, it's awful. I mean, it's like you're standing at the gates of hell. It is so painful. I can't even tell you. And I have an extremely high pain tolerance, which is why I was like, yeah, labor, no problem, no epidural, let's do it. I'm not afraid of pain. I have an extremely high pain tolerance, but 2 times in my life, which is these 2 labors, I have gotten to the point with pain where I said, I can't do it anymore. I don't know, that's not something I expected of myself, but I was like talking to Taylor and I was like, do you think it's okay if I have an epidural? Because I really had like high standards for myself and high hopes for myself, and I had always said that I wanted to go without it. And so, you know, he was totally like, if that's what you want, let's do it. Like, there's no shame in having an epidural. And I had had this internal battle before I ever even voiced anything to Taylor. I was like back and forth, like each contraction, can I do this? Can I not do this?
Well,
and
I knew
like,
the whole time that that's what you were thinking about. And I wasn't going to mention it until it got to a point where you felt bad enough that you would bring it up yourself. And
so the last step in this process was I needed my mom to come in, and I needed to ask her if it's okay, and if it's okay, not for permission, but like I needed to know that she wasn't going to be disappointed in me, because I knew Taylor wouldn't be. We had already talked about it. I needed to know that she wasn't going to be disappointed in me. So I asked her, and she was like, obviously she was like, no, you're being ridiculous. Just get the epidural if you want it. And so we kind of decided. And at the point that I decided, I was like, okay, I need it now. Like, I'm like an hour past needing it. So after I had the epidural, obviously, like, you can't feel your legs. One thing that was really worrisome was, because I wasn't in pain anymore and because everything was a little bit more calm, I was paying much more attention to the heart rate monitor. And at this time, his heart rate, Axel's heart rate, kept dropping like dramatically. Like, they don't want to see it go under what, 110?
Under, yeah,
I think it's 110.
About 110, yeah.
Beats per minute. And his would periodically drop, and it was timed with my contraction. So like at the end of a contraction and right after it, his heart rate would go as low as, like, I saw it as low as 50.
It would actually went down to 34 at one point.
30 something, yeah.
And very briefly.
Yeah, it would come back up, but I mean, it felt like an eternity waiting for it to come back up and watching that monitor. And the nurses periodically, when this would happen, would come rushing in and
3 nurses
watch the monitor. And I'm like, shoot, well, that doesn't make me feel good. When the charge nurse came in, I was like, why is the boss lady here? Like, this is not a good sign.
Yeah.
So I think I was at like
between 8 and 9.
Yeah, I was like an 8 or a 9 for a long time. We had determined that yes, for sure, he was posterior, which is sunny side up, or, you know, it's what causes back labor. So it's when the back of their head is on your spine rather than their face being at their spine. And so they tried me in all these different positions in order to get him to maybe flip around, because it's much easier to deliver a baby that is not sunny side up. They finally had me in like a hands and knees position, with like my face on the pillow, and Taylor and the nurse were holding my legs because I couldn't feel them. I couldn't hold myself up with them at all. So I was resting all of my weight on my arms that I possibly could. They were holding me up, and I was in that position for 30 minutes. At that point, after they kind of like rolled me back over, they checked me and I was at 10 centimeters. So that was super, super exciting. So it was like 9 or 10 at night. At that point, they decided they were gonna have me labor down while sitting upward in bed, or upright. So they had me sitting upright for quite a while. The nurse was like, okay, I'll be back in like 30 minutes to an hour or whatever.
She actually let gravity do its thing and pull him down further.
Yeah, farther. Yeah. So she actually ended up being gone for like an hour, hour and a half, I think. And then basically at that time, it was time to start pushing. Now, one thing that makes me a little bit annoyed is, like Taylor was saying, our nurse was super pro epidural. I don't know why. I don't know if maybe it makes her job less stressful or if everything goes more smoothly generally or what it is, but she was definitely like pro epidural, and I asked her, because I remembered from Levi's labor that having the epidural still in me, the painkiller still in me, I couldn't feel when I was pushing. So I pushed for 2.5 hours with Levi, and most of that time I couldn't feel. The feeling started to come back later, but I couldn't feel what I was doing, so my pushes were not achieving anything. I was like, if I get the epidural, will I be able to feel when I'm pushing? And my mind was too like scrambled to really solidly remember that no, I couldn't with Levi. And she was like, oh yeah, no problem, it won't be an issue. And that turned out not to be the case. So that kind of makes me a little bit unhappy, because it kind of led to what ended up happening. And I did end up pushing about 3 hours, and the nurse was like, you know what, it's just not happening. We need to get the doctor in here and talk about what we're gonna do. And so at that point, I was starting to get my feeling back, like for sure. And I could feel my pushes, like I could start to feel what they were doing and not doing, and what muscles I needed to use and stuff like that. And so I was like I was really kind of upset, because I was upset that my epidural was not wearing off and that it was getting in the way of me feeling what I was doing. And then that the feeling was coming back at the time that I was about to lose my chance to even do it at all, to push at all. And so I was kind of like telling her that and saying, if I have a couple more chances to push, I really think I could do more, make more progress at this time, because I can feel more. And the doctor came in and kind of said, your water's been broken for over 24 hours. We really need to start thinking about getting this baby out. The heart rate keeps dropping and stuff, and
the chances of more meconium being the baby's poop
and then there was meconium at that point. There hadn't been before, and then there was. And so they basically were telling me it was time for a C-section, and that was like, I know a lot of people have C-sections, and I know it goes fine, and there's nothing wrong with having a C-section, but for me, that was the no-go. That was not happening. Like, that's the one thing that I've always held out. Like, I've always said in my mind and out loud that I will try to go natural. If I have to have an epidural again, I will. I understand that that's necessary sometimes, I just don't want to have a C-section. Like, I just don't want that. And she left the room, and I just remember, like, I was just crying, because I was really terrified, and I didn't want the C-section, and I really didn't want an emergency C-section. And we've had like a lot of traumatic hospital experience in my family, and a lot of like, especially with abdominal surgeries, and I really just didn't want to go there at all. So I was really upset. Like, if you know me at all, I do not cry. Like, I cry at things that are like sentimental, or like, videos that are touching, or movies or whatever, but like for my own sake, I don't cry. I mean, I really don't. My mom probably hadn't seen me cry in like almost a decade. The doctor came in, and she could tell that I was like really upset, and she said, I think this was unique to this doctor, that this was even an option. She said, there's one other thing that we could try. It's a little bit risky. And in my mind, I was like, well, so is a C-section, but she was like, it's a little bit risky, and it may not even work. But she said, we can try using forceps. So with Levi, we had used the vacuum, or the suction, whatever it's called, which I didn't want to do, but it ended up being necessary, and we couldn't use that with Axel. And so forceps were the other option, and I was like a little bit horrified at that recommendation. And so we kind of ended up asking the doctor, like, what would you do? Or what do you, like, what's your gut feeling about it? She said, you know what, I think it's worth a try to go with the forceps. So from that point, we were like, okay, like, that's all we need, go. And as soon as we said go, like a whirlwind happened, like a hurricane of action happened in our room. Because
carts were being rolled in.
It was crazy, because basically
trays of scalpels and all these tools and things, and
Basically
15 providers.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the understanding was that if the forceps don't work, it is an immediate emergency C-section. Like, go down the hall to the OR right now. Get that baby out within 5 minutes. So as soon as I said go, the doctor starts getting ready. She like drops the end of the bed. She's doing all this stuff, getting all this stuff ready. The nurses are rushing around. Like Taylor said, like 15 people came in. And every time a person came in, they would say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I do this and this. And I'm like, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna remember that, but hi, come in. You know, I was like, I don't care.
One of the funniest parts for me was that she'd been there for so long that she'd cycled through like different shifts of different provider types. Like the anesthesiologist, the one on staff at that point was not the one that had given her epidural. It was some new person. And so all these people that were in there, we were about to start pushing with the forceps process. And so he kind of comes in and pops his head, is she comfortable? Like, he's doing his job, not knowing that we've really moved on from any care about that. It's just,
I just remember looking at him being like,
you can go, sir.
You're dismissed.
Yeah.
So then when everything was set up and everybody was in their place and everything was ready, she was like, okay, we're gonna do the forceps. So she kind of like stuck them in. How many contractions was it?
I want to say it was 1. Once she had the forceps in, it was 1.
Yeah. I remember there was a nurse here on my left side, and then this other nurse, she was on my right side, and they were right by my head. And all I remember is them both just like inputting audio input into my brain. Like this one, the charge nurse was really like,
she was awesome.
She was really like, you know, and she was
like, girl, yelling. You push now.
Yeah,
you
she
go
was like,
now.
Harder, push harder. But she was like super helpful, because like when I need motivation, sometimes the best thing for me is to just like yell at me, because then I'm like, okay, let's go. And then the other nurse on this side, she was so sweet, she was so nice, and the whole time she was like, you can do it, you're doing such a great job. And she was like the good cop and the bad cop, and it was just really, it was really intense. And literally it was 1 contraction. I think it was like 3 pushes, 1 contraction, and Axel was out, and that was it. Taylor was over here watching, and when he saw Axel come out, he was like a little bit traumatized.
It had been predetermined that when Axel came out, or when the baby came out, because we didn't know the gender at that point, that I would identify the gender and say it out loud, so you know, her and I kind of share that cool moment with him. And I do know that babies' heads are made of like multiple plates that are malleable, that do mold a little bit to help come through the canal, but
they shift.
Yeah, but you know, because of the forceps, and then there was also blood in the very moment where his head was coming out, his head was literally not round at all. It was like just misshapen, and that freaked the hell out of me. And I look over to a nurse, which there are 15 people in there. Like, there are prenatal nurses, there are NICU nurses, there are postnatal nurses, there are delivery nurses, and the doctor, and all these people. And I look over to one, which I believe now was one of the NICU nurses, who probably doesn't know a lot about, I mean, isn't usually there for deliveries, maybe. I don't know. But I looked at her, and she was like this. She was like, and that did not reassure me at all. So
I'm really glad I didn't see this, because I just have nightmares.
Bawling at that point. Just, I can't hold it back. He came out, and they were all kind of waiting for me to say it's a boy, and I couldn't even get words out of my mouth.
And I had no idea what was going on, so I was like, Huz, what is it?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Everyone was being silent. They could probably all see what it was, but like they were letting him do it, and he wasn't saying it.
And then, but at that point, like, I was looking, and you know, they had so much stuff going on, and I was behind Axel's head, and I literally couldn't see that area of his body. So I you know, eventually got out of my mouth, I don't know, I can't see. And so they moved it up a little bit, and I could see. I was like, it's a boy, you know. And you know, those 2 times that I said that in my life are 2 moments that I will never replace, or they'll never escape my mind, and I will never regret not waiting, or I will never regret waiting to find out the gender, because it's that moment that you cannot come up with any other cocktail of emotions like that in life to conjure up a surprise. It meant so much to me that we did it, and I if we have any more kids, we will definitely do that again. At least that's from my point of view.
So then they gave him to me and laid him on me, and
you keep migrating.
And I just remember the first thing I said, he had not even reached me yet. He was like being passed to me, and I looked at Taylor and I was like, he looks exactly like Levi.
He really did.
I remember
literally,
the way Levi looked when he was born, you know? And
I was having major deja vu.
He was laying on me, and I just remember looking at him and I was like, thank you for coming out. I just said that over and over and over. I was like, thank you for coming out to be with us. Yeah. Because I was just so relieved, you know, I was so relieved. I mean, it happened so fast.
All I wanted to do was just hug him. Like, you're here now. I just want to hug you.
Let's
and
be
you're
friends.
safe, and I'm glad you're here.
But that is the story. And now I'm just recovering.
We all made it.
Yeah, we all made it. It's been 2.5 weeks, and I'm recovering generally well, like nothing's gone wrong, but I have like a lot of pain that made me think for a while that my tailbone was broken. Now I'm not sure that my tailbone was broken, but it's something else. And basically I can't be on my feet or like up and about for more than like 3 minutes, or it hurts really bad. Thank you guys so much for watching, and my channel will be back to beauty videos ASAP, I promise. But if you guys want to see our vlog of the labor and the birth, I will link that down below on our vlog channel. So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.
Bye.